Today I want to share with you a healthy simple syrup recipe that's not only great for sweetening beverages and other liquids, but it can also be infused with herbs and spices and then used to make homemade tonics, which are perfect to have on hand during cold and flu season. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferments, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, generally simple syrups are made with water and white sugar. But unfortunately, white sugar is so void of nutrition that it makes sense to find some other more nutritious options for making a healthy simple syrup. Now, I like to make my simple syrup with honey, but you can also use maple syrup. If you use honey to make your simple syrup, which is what I'm going to use here, try to find one that's raw and unheated. And if possible, try to find one that's pourable, because pourable honey is going to dissolve a little easier when we go through the simple syrup process than your more solid honeys. But don't worry if the only honey that you can find that's raw and unheated is in a more solid form. You can still use that. It's just going to take a little longer for it to dissolve. Now, if you're on the beginning of your journey from a processed foods kitchen to a traditional foods kitchen, and the only honey you can find is honey that's been heated and is not raw, that's fine. I feel that it's better to use honey to make a simple syrup, even if it has been heated, as opposed to using white sugar, because even honey that has been heated still has more nutrients in it that have not been damaged by the heating process, as opposed to white sugar, which has really had all the nutrients stripped out of it. Much of the nutrients that remain in heated honey depend on what temperature to which the honey has been heated. Even honey that's labeled raw or unheated is gently warmed somewhere between 95 degrees Fahrenheit to 110 degrees Fahrenheit in order to make it into a pourable honey, such as this honey. What's most important when purchasing honey is to look for honey that's local to your area. That way you can be more assured that it is actually honey and is not being imported from other places where unfortunately the honey may be cut with other types of syrup and diluted. So look for raw honey or unheated honey or gently heated honey, and preferably honey that is from a local source, and you'll be all set. My cousin's husband raises bees and he gave us this honey. So that's a family honey. Now, the way that you're going to make a honey simple syrup is by mixing 1 part honey to 1 part warm water. And it just needs to be warm. You don't want to mix your honey with hot water, because we don't want to do any damage to the honey that we have, especially if it is a raw or unheated honey. And by warm water, you're looking for something around 110 degrees Fahrenheit, but don't worry if you don't have a thermometer. If you can stick a clean finger into the water and it feels like warm bath water, it's perfect. If you put your finger in and you had to pull it out quickly, it's too hot. Now, as I mentioned, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. That's what I find works best. However, depending on the level of sweetness that you like, after you make this once the first way in a 1-to-1 ratio, you can determine if you want to change that ratio. Some people like to have 1 part water and 2 parts honey. Other people like to reverse it and have 2 parts water and 1 part honey. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is get some warm water, because I like to put the water first in whatever vessel I'm going to mix this in. I'm just going to use a measuring cup. You can use a bowl, whatever you have, a jar, whatever you have on hand. But I find that if you pour your honey into your water, that's going to work the best to help it dissolve. Well, I've got my 1 cup of water in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my 1 cup of honey. And I'm just going to watch this as it goes in until I hit the 2-cup mark. Now that I've got both my honey and water in here, I'm just going to help with this little whisk here to start helping the honey to dissolve in this warm water. And you just want to keep whisking this until you feel no more thickness from the honey. Just keep blending it. It takes about maybe 30 seconds to 60 seconds to completely dissolve. Now, if you're using truly raw honey, that is in the solid form, it often has a very pale color to it. That will take a little longer to dissolve in the warm water. But stick with it. You know, it'll probably take maybe about 2 minutes or so. You will get it all liquefied. Now, this is your basic honey simple syrup. Now, you can use this just as is right now to sweeten beverages or to use in various tonics that you want to sweeten. However, you can take this one step further and begin to infuse it with different herbs and spices, which makes it even more beneficial when used even to sweeten beverages, but more important when used in making homemade tonics. Now, we'll talk about what I'm going to infuse this with in a minute, but first, if you wanted to just stop at this stage, what I would recommend is to refrigerate this. Put this in some type of container, maybe a squeeze bottle or something along those lines, where you can take it out and use it as you need. If you leave this at room temperature, which you can, you need to be advised, though, that this will begin to ferment. And fermented honey develops a richer flavor, and it's also very beneficial for you. However, you need to keep in mind that it may develop into something that's very slightly alcoholic. You may have heard the term mead, which was a very mildly alcoholic drink made from honey and water that was common back in the Middle Ages. But that's basically what can happen to this. So if you do not want this flavor to intensify, ferment, and potentially begin to develop into something that's mildly alcoholic, you do want to refrigerate this. Now, if you're completely new to simple syrups, a very common way that simple syrups are used, the traditional simple syrup that's just made from white sugar and water, is something that you may see at a fancy restaurant where the only iced tea they serve is unsweetened. But instead of just bringing you a pack of sugar, which may not dissolve and just sink to the bottom, they'll often bring a simple syrup to the table in a little pitcher. It's all very fancy. And then simple syrups are also used when making alcoholic beverages. Simple syrups, and especially those that are made nutritiously like this using honey, can often be used in making salad dressings or marinades or sauces. It's a wonderfully versatile syrup that can be used to sweeten many things. But my favorite way to use a honey simple syrup is to infuse it and let it be infused with different herbs and spices for a period of 24 hours and then strained and then used to make some type of cold and flu tonic. Now, what I'm going to show you today is how to make a ginger infused honey simple syrup. Now, in the description underneath this video, if you open up the description, you'll see the words recipe with a link next to it. Click on that, and that'll take you to the printable recipe for this, which is basically very easy in terms of honey and water. But I will have a lot of options for how to infuse this, because you can infuse your honey simple syrup with so many things. You can infuse it with ginger. You can infuse it with any type of citrus peel. You can infuse it with a variety of herbs. Mint is wonderful. Thyme is exceptionally wonderful because thyme has ingredients in it that are very soothing to the bronchial passages. And if you have a cough and you make a simple syrup with thyme that's been infused with thyme, and then you use that to make a hot tonic or a cough syrup or whatever the case may be, it's going to be wonderfully soothing to your bronchial system. Now, I just want to add as a caveat, because those of you who have known me well, you know that I am very interested in integrative medicine. So I am a believer in modern Western medicine when we really need it. But I love the idea of these home remedy type tonics and other home remedy preparations to be a wonderful support to whatever traditional Western medicine that we may need. And even if they aren't curing us, I think that they can often offer a lot of comfort. And that's why I like to share these type of recipes with you. And it's great to talk to your doctor about these things, when you are under the weather, because I'm finding, even with my own doctor, that they're becoming more and more open to allowing you to supplement your medications with home remedies like this, especially when you have colds and flus, because honey, ginger, lemon, and these are things I think that go back through the centuries to offer comfort to those type of conditions. If you're interested in learning more about integrative medicine, I highly recommend the books by Dr. Andrew Weil. He's an MD and he's Harvard educated, and he's written many books about how to use all of the things in the natural world to complement any Western medical medications or procedures or whatever you may need. And he's absolutely fascinating. I really enjoy it. So I really enjoy his books. I highly recommend them. Now today I'm going to infuse my simple syrup, my honey simple syrup, with ginger. And the reason is because I want to make a ginger honey simple syrup that I'm going to be using to make a lemon hot toddy. And I'll be sharing that recipe with you in an upcoming video. But I wanted to show you how to make this syrup first so that you'd have it so that you can learn how to make the lemon hot toddy next. And that lemon hot toddy is a non-alcoholic hot toddy. And again, another wonderful tonic to have on hand for cold and flu season. Now with the 1 part honey and the 1 part water, I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of grated ginger. And this is just fresh grated ginger to my honey. And I'm going to just get everything out of my measuring cup, and I'm just going to give this a good mix. Now, you could add, as I said, some thyme. You can mix and match. I'm just keeping this simple because I'm going to be using this particular one in a very specific recipe. But you could, as I said, you can do any kind of citrus peel, herbs, spices. You can even infuse this with fresh turmeric. That's becoming more and more common. I was surprised. They've been selling fresh turmeric at my grocery store. And it looks very similar to ginger, just when you cut it open or grate it, it's orange like a carrot. Well, this is well mixed. So now what I'm going to do is cover this, and I'm going to put this in my refrigerator for 24 hours because I don't want to leave this at room temperature because I don't want any fermentation to take place. So I will be refrigerating mine. I'm going to let that steep for 24 hours. Then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll move on to the next step. Well, I let this steep for 24 hours and it just smells wonderful. If you've made my ginger honey tonic, it smells very similar. Oh, it's just so invigorating. You're gonna really be pleased with how this turns out. I'm just gonna give this a stir to just distribute all of that wonderful ginger flavor evenly. Then you're going to want to get some type of vessel to decant this in. You can put it in a jar or a bottle, whatever you have. This is a 2-liter bottle, which is going to work out perfectly since I have a little under 2 liters here, or in our case, with US measurements, we have about 2 cups. So I'm just going to go ahead and slowly decant this. And then what I like to do is just press this down to just get every little last bit of our simple syrup out of this ginger. Now, don't throw this little bit of ginger away because you can put this in a tea bowl and make a little ginger tea, and it'll be delicious. It'll have a little bit of that honey flavor to it. It'll be very nice. Alrighty, now I'm just going to go ahead and put a cap on this, and I'm going to put this in the refrigerator because I don't want this to ferment. And I'm going to get ready to use this to make the lemon hot toddy that we talked about, which will be in an upcoming video. But in the meantime, if you want to learn how to make some other types of home remedies, and I've got a big playlist of them which are perfect for the fall during this cold and flu season, be sure to click on this video over here. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.